Hi there, welcome to Piece by Piece Studio by Kelly Boss, and I am your sewing coach, Kelly Boss. Today we are drafting and sewing a circle skirt. This little one is for Miss Eva, who's 3, but the method works for any size. I'll guide you step by step, clearly and carefully, so you can follow along at your own pace. So let's grab a few supplies and have some fun. All right, so we just need a few supplies to get started. Of course, we need our cute little darling fabric or the fabric of choice for yourself. A flexible measuring tape, which is really beneficial for going around the waist. A ruler, a school ruler, 12-inch ruler will work. If you have a yardstick, we can use that as well. A pencil with an eraser. And I am going to use this Sharpie just for this tutorial so it comes up on camera a lot better for you. And then finally, I'm going to also use my paper bag, and it's a recycle in my way of giving back to the planet. So you can just take your regular paper bag and cut it open nice and flat, and just like that, you have paper. And the final thing that we'll need is some elastic, and we'll go through that as we go through the tutorial. All right, let's get started. All right, so let's grab our measuring tape starting at the number 1 there. Make sure you're on the right side of the tape. And then let's find our waist. And the I'm a little teapot method is tried and true. Try to find something that's not bulky to wear, your undergarments or something form fitting because too much bulk will change the measurements and you want true measurements, okay? Now, let's take that tape measure starting for the 1 and let's wrap it around our waist, okay? And finding your waist is more of just finding that little indentation in the sides of your sides. And then once you find that, you want to adjust the tape for comfort and make sure that it's not sagging in the back too high, too low, but that it's actually even all the way around and sitting comfortably on your waist. And then once you get that measurement, note that measurement. Circle skirts only need 2 measurements, which is the waist and your desired length, okay? So note that measurement. And then from your waist again, we are going to measure the length. And that's totally up to you. You can have it to your thigh, to your knee, touching the ankle, dusting the floor, whatever works for you. But we only need those 2 measurements. To get us started. All right, so let's head on back over and have some fun. All right, so let's get started by drafting out 2 lines. These lines will act as our straight edge and connect our 90-degree angle that we need in order to start drafting our circle skirt. So take one side of your paper with your ruler and strike out a line. And then on the other side, strike another line, just making sure that the 2 lines meet at one corner. And that is the 90-degree angle and how we will begin drafting. Feel free to use the QR code to download the worksheet to follow along or keep as a reference. And now let's go on with some math. So remember, we're using Eva's waistline, which is 22 inches. So we have 22 inches. And so it is pi that helps us get to the final answer. So it's basically divide your waist by 2 pi to get the radius. All right, so let's take it slower than that. Take the waist measurement of 22 inches and divide it by 2 pi. So 1 pi is 3.14 approximately. 2 pi is just adding 3.14 plus 3.14, and that gets you 6.28. Now, this is not anything you need to like just remember forever. Grab your calculator and, have fun with this. Make it a learning process and just have fun. So, we're just going to take the math here in 22-inch waist divided by 6.28 is approximately 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to definitely add that seam allowance here of 1/4 of an inch, which is 0.25, because we need some seam allowance because we're going to make seams. So if you add the seam allowance to it of 2.5, you're going to have 3.75 for your final measurement. And with that, we can begin drafting our circle skirt. All right, let's go have some fun. All right, so I had to tape on a little piece of paper to my pattern, and I did not leave enough room for the seam allowance. So just make sure that you leave room for your seam allowance, which in this case was 0.25 or a quarter inch. I could have edited this video, but it wouldn't have been the same. I want people to understand that things happen and they're fixable. So now let's get started of our measurements. Right here at that 90-degree point that we created is where we're going to begin by placing our tape measurer starting at the number 1 and come straight down the line. And for Eva's skirt, it was 3.75 inches. So I'm going to take my tape, stretch it out and down, and mark my first mark of 3.75. You mark your measurement on this line. And without moving the top part, you keep it pointed at that 90 degree, and you just glide the rest of the tape measure and mark 3.75. So I'm just gliding, keeping my finger on the 90 degree, and you place as many dots as you need. There's no number. You just place them to your comfort level. Okay. So I'm just going to come all the way across until we get to this last line and make a 3.75 mark. And now we're just going to play connect the dots. Find yourself a comfortable position because it really helps by moving your wrist more so than your hand. And so you just glide your wrist across, connecting the dots, and there's your first arc. Now, we're no longer going to use this point of our 90 degree anymore. The rest of our measurements are coming from this arc that we just made, okay, which is the waistline. So from the waistline, we are going to measure down the length of the skirt. Eva's skirt is 19 inches. So we're going to measure down 19 inches. So from there at the waist arc, you're simply going to draw a dot from the straight line and make your way to the other straight line, forming a second arc. And this here is exactly how you start making a circle skirt. Take your time, measure twice, cut once. That's always the rule. Before you cut, measure it twice and make your way over. Use as many dots as you need to make the circle or the arc work for you. And then the final dot should be on the straight line. I'm just going to go back through and put a few more because I feel like I could add a few more to help my tracing work out for me. So once we finish putting the dots, we're going to go ahead and repeat the process of tracing freehand or with the curved ruler if you have one. Freehand is just fine. I'm going to use freehand in this particular video. And then we're going to cut it out. And remember to use your paper shears. Do not use your fabric scissors for paper. Well, why is that? Because you dull your scissors. So that's it. You see me connecting dots here, and this is how it's done. Take your time, enjoy the moment. You're creating a marvelous pattern for you or a loved one. And guess what? When you make it this time, that's it. This is your pattern. This is the base. And here we go. Well, you just watched me do it. I hope you followed along. If not, you can rewind this video as many times as you need or as many times as you want. Make sure you follow along with the available worksheet, scanning the QR code, and there you have it. We made our pattern. All right, let's make our waistband. I took a piece of my paper bag and I just added some tape to make it a little longer. And then I decided to place it on the fold after all that. But anyway, I placed it on the fold. And remember, the waistband is going to be the same measurement, which is 22 inches of Eva's waist. So you're going to place your waist measurement there and divide it by 2 because we are placing it on the fold of the fabric. Meaning when you place this pattern onto the fabric, you're going to make sure it's on the fold. So when you open it up, you have one long continuous piece. I'm going to use my grid ruler for ease for me, and I'm just placing my ruler on the fold at 11 inches because 22 divided by 2 is 11. I'm going to go ahead and strike the first line and then I'm going to determine how wide I would like the waistband. And that will change on you, your design, the skirt, the client. There's a lot of factors there. I decided to make this 4 inches. So when I fold it in half, it will be a 2 inch wide waistband. And also the elastic that I plan on channeling through matters as well because the width of the waistband has to fit through. So then I put the fold symbol there, which is a universal symbol for the fold. And then we need to add the seam allowance. All right, so I dip away for a little bit because it would just be too much like right if I was to have cut this video. So I had to go run and get my red marker, which will help me to add my seam allowance. So we spoke about seam allowances on the skirt, and I did add my seam allowances. So I went around the skirt and I just added my 1/4 inch again and traced. So you'll see me do it here on the waistband in real time. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my grid ruler, use whatever measuring instrument that you have. It all works just fine. And I'm going to measure over 1/4 of an inch for my seam allowance, which is where I will stitch. So I'm just measuring and getting everything all aligned up. And because this video is not sped up or altered in any, form, you're just going to see me really working in real time, thinking and processing everything through, measuring twice so I only have to cut once. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm using the red to show you the double line. So that's my seam allowance. And uh, I really like a slowed down video at times because it just gets to show the viewer that take your time. It's okay. There's no race. This is therapeutic. This is fun. This is relaxing. This is creative. We don't have to always be in a complete rush. So if your waistband takes you 45 minutes to make, it's okay. It's 45 minutes of free therapy. And there we have it. I have created the waistband. 22 inches divided in half gave me 11 inches. I decided the width. I went ahead and added a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And now I'm just making some notes for myself. It is important that you mark your pattern pieces as you begin your pattern draft journey, or maybe make just a bunch of circle skirts. It's important that you kind of mark them because it gets confusing after a while when you look at them. So mark your patterns, and then I'm using my paper scissors here and I'm cutting around the seam allowance. And you want to take the same exact approach with the skirt, okay? You want to go around and cut the seam allowance all the way around. Because then when you place this down onto your fabric and you cut, once you remove the pattern and you go to your sewing machine and you place this on your machine, you are going to be sewing in that seam allowance, right? Seam allowance. And then you'll have the exact amount of fabric and the exact measurements. Now you see me kind of cutting this off. I didn't really have to tape it. When you're sewing and drafting, you can start one way, finish another. There's no right or wrong. As long as it fits your project, it works for you and you're happy. All right, so there's our waistband. Then let's get started on this skirt.